Hey guys, how are you? I hope you're all doing very well. This evening I'm going to be doing another movie review. This movie is a horror film from Australia, English language, released in the year 2017, directed by Damien Power, and this film is called Killing Ground. So Killing Ground is about a young couple. They've been recently engaged, so to celebrate their engagement they decide to go camping by a lake in the middle of the bush. So when they get there, they realise they're not alone because a few metres away there is another tent. But unfortunately the tent hasn't been attended to for quite some time, which causes a little bit of concern with the main couple. So they believe something bad happened to these people, so they want to call for help, but their mobile phones are out of range and they can't drive anywhere because they actually got a flat tyre leading into this place. So help does arrive in the form of two pig hunters. Now they initially think that they're there to help, but helping them is the furthest thing away from the minds of these strangers as the situation starts to escalate into a terrifying nightmare. And what that nightmare is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Killing Ground. Not since Wolf Creek have I had such a hard time actually getting through a film, and I will say that in the best possible way because this movie understands what it is to create a genuine horror experience. This is the movie that Australia really needs, because before Wolf Creek a lot of these Australian films were very much watered down and they were basically confined to a local audience. So outside of Australia not many people noticed us, not since the glory days of 1970s and 80s Ozploitation classics. And so there was a long hiatus where just Australia were not producing anything worthwhile. But ever since Wolf Creek came along, it really opened the eyes of worldwide audiences, and they realised that we can produce some very good films. And then other films such as Storm Warning and The Loved Ones come out, which actually shocked audiences once again. And so these are movies that break free of basically PC crowds, that breaks free of television movies, and they feel like it feels as though they have a lot of balls, and those balls create something that is a genuine horror experience. And that's exactly the thing I can say is the best positive with Killing Ground, is that it is a showcase of Wolf Creek and those other films where it does break free of all the taboo subjects that the PC crowds say you can and can't do. And when it blows away all those rules and all the taboo subjects, you don't exactly know where these directors are taking you. So basically Damien Power, he takes you on a nerve-shredding game of basically a sadistic game where you're not quite sure where he's taking you, but he's taking you down basically the depths of human despair, the depths of human depravity, to a point where I felt as though it was a car crash. I didn't want to look at it, but the director was forcing me to basically pry my eyes open with an invisible presence that was very engulfing. And so I just couldn't help but feel that as though that I felt guilty for watching it, because I knew what was in store for these innocent people. And this is basically a movie about ugliness engulfing innocence, and it's spitting it on the screen. It's made no apologies for it, and it's giving you a ride into hell, and it's giving you a ride where you feel as though you need to catch your breath, and after it you'll have images that have been burnt into the memory for quite some time. So it's extremely provocative. It's going to upset a lot of people. There were some scenes in this film that actually rattled me, and that's saying something because I'm not easily rattled, but I think the reason why it rattled me so much is because it's so realistic. You've got realistic characters, you've got a realistic sense that you're joining these people on a specific day. Now these people already know each other. They don't have to reintroduce themselves to the viewer. I felt as though I just joined them on a specific day that was unfolding in very tragic circumstances. So the strong realism in the characters and the overall setting and the overall violence is what makes you, it prevents you from disconnecting yourself. And when you can disconnect yourself in a very violent film, whether it's gratuitous violence or over-the-top gore, when you can disconnect yourself, that's when the entertainment comes in, and that's where the level of security comes in. But when you've got a film like Wolf Creek with that depicts very hard-hitting violence, and it's not overly graphic, but it's graphic enough to really hit home what it's trying to do, I never felt as though I could actually get that safety barrier. I felt as though the unpredictability in the levels of violence and the level that this director was willing to go to, I thought it just creates that sense of panic. It creates that sense of sheer desperation that these characters were going through. And so it's also a very unconventional way of storytelling, in that you've got two different perspectives. Now you've got one perspective that takes place on the day before this couple actually arrived. And so when you've got brief flashbacks into what's happened the day before, it gives the present day that much more menace. There's a lot of suspense in it that just, it almost becomes unbearable. And when bad things are happening, then all of a sudden I felt as though, okay, I'm in a very hardened horror experience, and it's an experience that, as I said, I can't look away from, but I'm not really enjoying what I'm seeing. And as I said, I can mention that in the best possible way, in that the director manages to force you to watch it. You don't know why you're watching this, you don't know why you can't take your eyes off it, but it just just has that quality in the cinematography that is very beautiful, but it has that beauty that is contradicted by the ugliness of man. And so it makes it even more haunting in that, okay, this normally is a scenery that I would marvel at, but because of what's happening, all of a sudden that scenery has a sinister touch to it. Then you've got a beautifully haunting soundtrack that helps contribute the emotion to these characters when they actually first go through these bad things. And so there's a level of mystery, and it gives that very simple sort of story in that it's basically ugliness that is killing innocence. And so you've seen this story done time and time again, but there's a level of complexity to it told in the different perspectives of its storytelling, which is something I really liked. And then right at the end, it does hit you pretty hard, and it does caps off what was an extremely memorable Australian horror film. And as far as Australian cinema is concerned, I can't say that, you know, memorable films come thick and fast. They are few and far between, but Killing Ground is just yet another example of how extreme Aussie films can actually go. So this is a genuine Australian shocker that I think is going to apply to a lot of people who like this type of thing. Unfortunately, there are two problems that do prevent it from being an absolutely fantastic film. Now, one of the problems is very small. I thought right at the end it could have gone down a different sort of avenue. It would have been a lot better. But the biggest problem is the way it told its story. Now, as I said, I like the fact that it was two different perspectives, but one perspective from the day before is a little bit too detailed. So I felt as though I was playing fortune teller, is that I knew that this was going to result in a horrible car crash. It's the inevitable car crash, and there is that sense of desperation that you can't stop this car crash, and you're hoping that the aftermath isn't going to be as horrific as you think it is. But I thought that without that sense of control, knowing what's in store for this couple, it would have been a lot more suspenseful. So the overall day before needed to be a lot more vague. If it didn't answer its questions to the level of detail that it does, I thought that not knowing what this was in store for this couple could have actually taken you on the journey with them. But because you know what these people are capable of, I always felt as though I was one step ahead. So I was taking myself out of the actual journey and I was watching from afar. And although it's not any easier to actually watch the film, I think it would have been a lot better if that was the level of curiosity that would have created a lot more suspense than it does. But having said that, as I said, it is a very memorable film. It's a very, very shocking film. It rattled me. There is some very upsetting imagery that I'm sure is going to get to a lot of people. It's not overly gory, but there is enough violence there to really elevate it past a lot of shocking gore films that have come before it. So overall, for Killing Ground, definitely what Australia needs, and I'm going to give it 3.5 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.